Hey everybody, welcome to episode 19. Are we there yet? Kinky love episode. I'm your host, Susan Ruth.
And I'm your host, Mara Adelman, and we are two humans having the real conversations and raising the questions that we all have about where is that there when it comes to dating, relationships, and sex.
I'm digging the outfit. What's up with that?
It goes right into where my there is. As I was getting ready for this talk, I was feeling so sad that I let a guy derail my plans to go to the Folsom Street Fair a couple years ago, before the pandemic even. We were supposed to go, we went and stayed in the city, and we're going to have sushi dinner, and the next day go to this, it's like a bondage, kink, leather festival in the city. So I had this outfit, and he was being immature because he got too drunk the night before, was hungover, didn't really want to play. So he went into asshole mode. And by that night I was done. And I was like, in the morning, let's just go home. And then of course, on the way home, a friend calls and was heading that way. And I should have just stayed by myself. I should have stayed, took the ferry, took a cab. And then this year, my friends called. He's like, me and my boyfriend, we're staying in the city. We have a bunk bed in our hotel room. Get down here. I couldn't go either. I had too many adulting things that I had to do. So one of these days, I am putting this on and going to observe the Folsom Street Fair in the city.
I'll have to go with you maybe.
It's in San Francisco, and it's Folsom Street, and they shut the whole street down, and it's whipping and leather and bondage. And it's not really my kink, but I appreciate everybody's kink, and we're going to talk more about that. And I just like to, if it was up to me, I would either try everything once, or at least if I'm not going to try it, at least see everything once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So that's my there. I'm never ever going to let a man derail me from something I want to do again. I should have just stayed.
Yeah.
Anyhow, where's your there?
This week, my there is I went to see the Korean film Decision to Leave. It's excellent. It's all about relationships, and I really loved it. It's great. Same writer director as the movie Old Boy. I don't know if you're into foreign film. I love foreign film.
As always, let me get out my pen. Susan here is always up on the latest movies and things. What was the first one?
I love going to the movies. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world to do. It's called Decision to Leave. Yeah, it's a great film. I also, a while back, I saw Triangle of Sadness, and that's really great as well. But you have to be okay with seeing people throw up, because there's a whole scene that's pretty brutal. And it was excellent. Such a great movie. Same director, writer as Force Majeure, which was also an excellent film.
I wonder if there's a vomiting fetish. Huh.
There's that. No, I know. A friend of mine is a sex worker. One of her clients has a vomiting fetish. So
wants him to vomit on her?
He wants to see her vomit.
Ooh. Yeah. There's certain things we're going to talk about today that aren't my thing, but the main story of this entire talk today is everybody gets a thing. Yeah. Unless it's one of the bad things we're going to talk about later that you don't get. there's like,
don't want to hurt people. Unless you're into getting hurt. I mean, consensual hurt is one thing. It's complicated. Let's get into it.
This is a complicated topic, and it is not my specialty, but it was fun to dive into. And I have had a couple clients talk to me about some of this stuff. And so super fascinating. The first thing that came up is that it was so taboo once upon a time. And then 50 Shades of Grey comes out, right? And it's not factual, and it's not the most perfect written book.
Never seen it, so I don't.
There's a movie, and if you read the book, because you're very literary, you would have a very hard time with it, because it's not, Anyway, but what it did was it completely normalized the kink and fetish community in this book, even though it's not completely factual, because before that it was like, those perverted, horrible people that do these things, coming from some people. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, it's just those 50 Shades people. Oh, and then most of those people are actually envious and would like to experience more of the 50 Shades lifestyle.
My experience in the world, the people that are saying, oh my God, and screaming about how something is wrong are generally the ones doing it, and are ashamed of the fact
or
that
wishing they could do it.
Yeah, so it was a real bummer. The kink shaming is a real bummer. It's
a super bummer. So we're hoping to destigmatize some of it today. But again, please be nice to me, because some of it's new to me. So we're going to start with some definitions, because I had some of these wrong as well. So fetishes, It's a sexual fixation with a non-genital body part, non-human object, such as clothing, latex, the feet.
Balloons, toothbrush. I mean, it can be anything. Yeah.
Anything. The feet one's always a big one. People hear about feet, the foot fetish all the time. So it's a very big fixation on something. And oftentimes people with a true fetish have a hard time getting aroused or climaxing or doing these things if the fetish is not involved.
I know somebody with a oral sex fetish that he can only stay aroused if he is pretty much in process of going down on someone.
Really? But then and then straight into intercourse can stay aroused. Yeah. But needs to have the oral sex to get aroused.
Yes.
Interesting. I mean, there's so many of them we'll get into in a minute that it's hard to even know where they start and stop. And
yeah,
again,
one of my gay friends, he does not he doesn't like to get anything penetrated on him. He doesn't even really like getting blowjobs, but he loves giving blowjobs. So I would say that that's kind of fetishizing the blowjob because it's not a full spectrum. You know what I mean? He doesn't want any other stuff. He only solely wants that. So I think that's fetishizing.
Only wants to give it. Well, yeah, because
I'm not sure either, but
yes, because if it's something that can be defined as an extreme sexual fixation and the only thing that gets you off, then that's a fetish. Versus kink, which is like any intimate practice involving non-normative situations or concepts. I hate it that that's the definition. That's the definition, non-normative. I think someday they'll find that they can change it to any intimate practice involving a less frequently used situation or concept.
Different strokes for different folks.
Different strokes for different folks. And again, it can be not always sexual. The kink communities also expand that to any kind of activity and situation, right? Voyeurism, wanting to watch other people, exhibitionism, wanting to be in front of other people, or sadism and masochism and all of those pieces. Mm-hmm. So then to describe BDSM, definition, is a variety of erotic practices or role-playing practices involving bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, and sadomasochism. Sadomasochism is probably the one that people don't understand the word as much, and that's things as far as inflicting pain or humiliation. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about sadomasochism is actually by inflicting pain or humiliation, it can often help people heal past trauma, past sexual trauma, past childhood issues by being humiliated. So that was fascinating to learn that.
It is fascinating. I actually on Hey Human podcast, my other show, I had a master BDSM guy on the show, and he specialized in bloodplay. So in cutting his submissives and spanking and whipping to draw blood. And he is a licensed practitioner. I mean, he's a nurse practitioner. So he can do that safely and within the confines of whatever the boundary of the person getting cut or whatnot. But I thought that was so fascinating. I personally was like, wow.
That's fascinating.
I'm sure he would. Yeah.
A couple of the other, it's called medical play. I don't know if the cutting is involved in that, the bloodletting part. But I almost wonder if when people are cut, it releases that trauma, because a lot of people cut themselves when they're feeling.
A lot of people do cutting, and they say it brings them release because I think it gets them back in their body, and there's
not that we are condoning cutting. Please don't. If you're feeling the need to cut yourself because you're feeling stressed, go talk to a counselor.
Yeah.
But supposedly it releases something.
I had a girlfriend in high school. She used to burn herself. That was like her thing.
Yes.
Calmed her, and I was like, okay, but it's not for me to judge. I wouldn't be able to do that to myself. No.
Well, and the medical play got interesting. There's such things as it doesn't do anything for me because I'm a medical provider, but there's people that enjoy sounding, which is like taking a metal instrument and putting into the penis or the urethra in a female, which is a very tiny tube that the pee comes out of. I did have a patient once upon a time who would inject meth up into his urethra and his penis. And until I was studying for this, or reading and getting ready for this, it never dawned on me that it wasn't just that it would get him high because it was in a different place. It also might have done something kink wise or so the medical stuff's harder for me because I'm like, oh, it's medical, and anyway. So there are a lot of different kinds of fetishes and kink, but it all kind of plays into fantasy. And we did a whole episode on fantasy. So fantasy is a sexual thought or erotic mental image or pattern that kind of stirs a person to get sexually interested or enhance sexual arousal. So oftentimes fantasy plays into kink. For instance, you know, you're all excited because you got handcuffs. Well, that might be the kinky part, but unless you have a fantasy or play out that like
Your brain.
brain fantasy. Oh, I'm dominant and I'm in charge of you, or you're the submissive. Then it's not that exciting just to put handcuffs on. So it all kind of interplays with each other. When you're looking at kink, kink usually develops over time with different sexual experiences and often changes over time. For instance, people might be like, I really want to have multi-partner sex. I want to go have group sex. But so oftentimes,
kink, though, I feel like anymore that seems pretty.
Which is why I go back to like pretty much all of this is going to be more normalized. Once upon a time, I think that would be considered more kinky, unless you go back to the 70s when I think my parents might have been doing some of that. I don't know. Like, yes, it falls into the kink domain. Sex parties and group sex falls into the kink domain.
Sure.
So, but oftentimes people really want to do that. And then I was reading this study that oftentimes when people do it, many people are like, okay, I got that out of my system. I don't need to do that again, which is opposite of a fetish, which is like, that is the thing I need. I'm super fixated on that in order to get aroused and in order to have fun. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And all fetishes are kink, but not all kink are fetishes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm having a hard time with that one for a minute. Like, yeah, you can have bottom line, all fetishes are kink, not all kink are fetishes. So a lot of the kink and fetishes can come from sexual imprinting, which is super interesting as a child. And I actually have a couple of these myself. So you'll have to think and see if you have any of these. So sexual imprint, like for instance, I remember reading this book that I found on my parents' bookshelf. And it was, she was like a sex worker and she was kind of forced to give a blowjob. It was a little bit of force, like dominant, submissive type stuff, right? And again, we're not advocating for forcing anybody in real life, but in the erotica moment as a teenager, super horny, I was like, oh, I kind of like that power play of submissive dominance thing. And to this day, I still do. So I think that almost was imprinted on me a little bit as a child. I really like that kind of power dynamic. I also remember watching some movie where like somebody was asleep and the person kind of like was like, no, we're going to do this. And again, not for real life people. Somebody's asleep and they don't give consent, do not go there. But I remember that kind of turned me on. And to this day, that kind of like, oh, what, like if I'm a sexy one. Does it work for you? Yeah, sleep at 4 a.m. and your person's like, oh, come on, honey. It totally works for me.
And you pretend maybe to be asleep for a little bit longer or something, and they're sort of taking advantage of you. And
does that work for you too?
I think there's a lot of domination fantasies that in real life you would not want that to happen with somebody you didn't know or trust, but certainly in a fantasy world or in a kink world, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if that's kinky per se. That is probably more fantasy.
It actually has a name, insomnophilia.
There you go.
I learned a new term. I was like, oh, I kind of like insomnophilia. I like the idea of pretending to be asleep or being asleep and having somebody want.
When I was a kid, I think I talked about this on another episode, that me and my friend, we played hypnotist, and we would hypnotize each other, and we'd have to do whatever whoever was the hypnotist at the time, to do whatever the hypnotist said because we were being hypnotized.
How old were you guys?
7, maybe.
Yeah. Early. You were already in this like power play dynamic of submission and dominance. But I guess that was the thing that came out to me, is a lot of the stuff is ingrained in us when we're young, right?
Yeah. I mean, children are sexual beings. That's why it's so effed up with the whole like child abuse situation, is because kids are naturally sexual beings. I mean, you'll see a little kid masturbate or whatever when you're babysitting and whatnot, and you're just like, totally okay, not a problem, but we do that sort of in our private time, in your private time. So it is interesting. Like some kids, I think I started, and again, we're getting off topic, but I think I was pretty young when I started masturbating as well. Pretty young.
But it sounds like you were also kind of sexually imprinted by some of these things. If the power play stuff still.
I read the book. My parents had a book on the shelf. It was probably my mom's, The Wanton. And there was like some racy stuff in there. And I was just reading it as a little kid, just like, holy shit. What's Oh my God.
We're going to do a podcast eventually on erotica. I think it's
love
fascinating.
erotica.
I love
To this
erotica.
day, I love reading erotica.
Yeah, me too.
Much big turn on. Yeah.
It actually works better for me than actual pornography, but it takes more effort because you got to, but I love erotica. Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. So the sexual imprinting, like here's a good example of fetish versus kink. So for me, I think it's kinky to have the insomnophilia and maybe pretend to be asleep, but I don't have to have that happen in order to get aroused or have an orgasm. Versus, like, there was an example of like a young boy who had piano lessons with his teacher, and it was really his only time away from his female relatives and only other time with a female. And she would always wear boots, like leather boots or tall boots. And all of a sudden he developed a boot fetish to the point where like he could see a boot and be aroused, even not on a person.
Yeah.
So for this person, it developed into a fetish, which is something you need to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I knew a woman in Chicago that got paid handsomely and she got to keep the shoes. There was a guy, a fetishist, who had a fetish for shoes, and he would buy her very high-end shoes and boots. She would wear them. He would masturbate on her feet, and she gets to keep the.
Ooh, I'm almost tempted to be like, pick me. I would love really expensive boots.
Oh, I was like, wow, that's like a gig.
Well,
I mean, look, there's the Only Feet, OnlyFans, Only Feet. There's all sorts of underwear.
I was about to bring up the underwear one. So the market for remember the, what was the movie of the prison ladies?
Oh yeah, Orange is the New Black.
They did that whole thing where they were all getting their dirty underwear and sending them off to make money. When I watched that, I was like, I had an ex-boyfriend who we'd been together for probably 2 years or something before he admitted to me that he would sniff my dirty underwear to masturbate. Totally kinky, right?
Yeah.
Not a fetish, because he didn't have to. We could also have sex together without him having to smell my dirty underwear.
Okay, I'm starting to get the understanding of the difference.
So it took me a while as I was researching this. So somebody who has a true fetish is going to be like, I need your dirty underwear over my face to be able to be aroused and to be involved, right?
Yep.
I thought it was funny that it took him 2 years to tell me that.
Yeah.
Don't people know? I like to hear all this stuff. It totally turned me on. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll leave some around the house. We were really young. And for the sexual response cycles, we did episode 9, sexual response cycles, talks about how arousal is the very first piece moving into these things. And so for people with with a fetish, they need to be aroused first. My favorite part about the BDSM, the kink, the fetish communities, guess what it is? Can you guess?
Community.
Community. I like the community aspect of it because I always think community is important. They have such boundaries around consent and communication.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And they even go so far as like aftercare. So it's pretty much like, let's talk before, let's make sure there's consent, let's do it, let's have aftercare and come down from it and talk about it and debrief it.
Yeah, the guy.
And you know how much I like to communicate. It's like, oh.
The guy I interviewed talked a lot about how aftercare was so important. So that is cool.
I know. So again, I always go back to like, remember how I was talking about how I wanted to date a couple? I was online talking to a couple. It never panned out, and it's not really what I want. But the part that drew me to it was the communication, the consent, the honesty, the radical honesty. Why can't us heterosexual beings who just want to date have that?
There is an app that I researched for one of my episodes on Hey Human, and the app is called Feeld, F-E-E-L-D. So I signed up on it and try to talk to some people. And that is for people that are more into the fetish community and the kink community. So if anybody listening is looking to explore that side of themselves, check out that app. Again, it's called Feeld, F-E-E-L-D.
I thought I linked to it, but I don't think I did. I'll find it. I was supposed to link to it. It's a good one. There's also, it might be in the notes. When we get to it, there's also another one that's for like people under 35. I guess Feeld is for everybody. They came up with one for like the young folks, for the millennials of the world.
Kids these days.
So yeah, I really think it's cool that they have so much consent going on.
Your makeup looks really good, by the way.
I was going with like the darker.
Looks good. We're like the angel and the devil right now.
You're like little angel with your little pearl, and I'm like, I'm the devil.
Yeah, I thought this is a nice sort of wink to sex.
Oh, the pearl. I would play with your pearl, but you're really far away. Oh, and I don't really like to play with pearls as much as I like to play. I prefer a sea urchin. No, it's a male. Anyway,
A cucumber?
A cucumber. I prefer a cucumber.
That's like Dr. Ruth. What you do? I love Dr. Ruth.
She's the best. She's the bestest. There has been some postulation. I listened to this whole podcast about how if more people were honest about their kinks and their fetishes, there would be less problems with things like pedophilia, less Bill Cosby's of the world. He wanted to knock women out and have sex with them. Well, if he had partners that would pretend to be knocked out and he could have sex with them. And so the concept that pedophiles, there are a lot of people out there who can have these kinks and fetishes and never act on them because they have empathy.
Yeah, Bill Cosby is a rapist, so I don't know. For people who are rapists, I don't even know if consent would work for them, because the whole part of it is power and control.
Yeah, I might have that one backwards.
That might not be a.
Thank you. Take Bill Cosby out of it. But there are a lot of people who have these kinks and fetishes who sometimes act out inappropriately. Is
pedophilia a kink? Or
no. We'll get into that. That's a paraphilia.
Yeah, okay. Because I said that's something completely.
I don't think I'm explaining this well. I think I might have linked to this guy. If not, I should. He talked about how essentially there's a lot of people who think things in their brain but never act them out because they have empathy. They may still have thoughts like a pedophiliac, but they never do it. Versus people who have zero empathy and end up doing these things.
Well, one could argue the guys or girls that love when women have shaved their pubic area because it looks, I mean, that's kinky. That's kinky. And but it's also, it's kind of on a line,
It's on a line. It's on a line there. I agree it's on a line, but there's lots of lines. And so again, we'll get to the ones that the lines you do not cross at the end, because it's very important that people understand that if they're feeling like crossing those lines, they need to go seek help, because people shouldn't get hurt in these acts, right?
For sure.
Not okay.
Sure.
But I think if more couples talked about their sexual compatibility, their kinks, their fetishes, what they both want, we would have more congruent partners with more congruent sex lives, number one, and possibly less violence, bad things going on. I hope that would be the hope. So, and then you go down to things like core erotic themes. So everyone has a lot of core erotic themes. I probably have 4 or 5 of them. The fantasies you think about, the porn you go to, the erotica you go to, the things you want to do with your partner. And a lot of those also come from being a younger person. Those are like your things that get you going. So
you mean come from, meaning they show up when you're younger?
They come from things you experience, things you like, things that then made them your core erotic themes that get you going. And so most people have several of them. Like, you don't have to share if you don't feel comfortable, but like, do you have more than one that fits into your head where you're like, that's my, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. I like that.
I mean, sure. Like, for example, I like anime porn. If I'm going to watch porn, which I don't do very often, but if I do, I like the hentai stuff because I don't feel bad for anyone. I don't feel like, oh, this cartoon was abused by her uncle. I don't feel like that. So I prefer that. And weirdly, a subset of that kind of stuff is the tentacle, like the weird creatures, like the strange, I don't know if that's kinky or fetish. I think it might be fetish of, these weird anatomical creatures doing stuff to each other, which is so bizarre. I know, but it's kind of hot.
I think that would fall into the kink thing that it turns you on.
I don't know. It's kind of hot to
watch. Fetishes, you would need that every time, but you're saying sometimes you watch that and it's like,
sometimes I watch it, I'm like, ooh, that's kind of hot. This octopus is having, or this alien with, tentacles is having sex with this girl who's like, ooh, yeah, But it's a cartoon.
You super like that sci-fi stuff. So that plays.
I do love sci-fi.
It plays into your like, so what are your core erotic themes in sci-fi? That's awesome. It's super awesome.
One of my first crushes, Spock.
See, that's so a core erotic theme for you. So everybody's got 4 or 5 or 6. Who knows? Maybe you only have one. If you have a core erotic theme, why not just like fantasy share that with your partners?
Maybe it's a point of year thing, because I also think Legolas is really hot.
Which one? Who?
Legolas, the elf from Lord of the Rings.
Oh, hilarious! You have it. It's a. So when you meet a man and then you notice his ears are kind of pointy,
I'm
and
like,
then
"Oh."
you realize that's why you like him. That's
No,
cute.
I definitely fetishize intellect. I think when people start, I mean, I regularly.
Remember, fetish is like you have to have it, but yes.
Oh, okay. Then is it a kink?
Versus it turns you on.
It turns me on. Yeah, I don't know. It's all convoluted for me.
I'm telling you, getting ready for this, I was like, it's confusing.
It's confusing. It's confusing. I've never been tied up by a partner, but I've certainly fantasized about it. And I don't know if I would like it in real life, but in that theory, I love the idea of it. And sometimes during sex, I might go to that in my brain, like I'm being tied up, even if I'm not, because I've never.
That's another core like erotic theme is like being bound. And so I was watching this girl, I forget the name on Instagram, but she's in the bondage community, something doll. I'll have to look it up later. And all of a sudden I was super turned on by the concept. They're tied up and twisted. It will never happen in real life. I am highly claustrophobic. So in the future, we're going to have somebody on to talk about shibari, which is a Japanese bondage style. I'm super fascinated by it.
Or it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. But even if somebody's on top of me too hard and I can't breathe, I'm like, get off. I'm super claustrophobic.
Well, the bodice that you're wearing right now is in the vein of that kind of concept of this rope play.
Yes, I think that's coming soon down the road. We're gonna have somebody come talk about rope play. It fascinates me that I was turned on by something that would also terrify me, but we're going to talk about that next. It actually makes sense based on what I learned. So here's some reasons that fetishes occur: out of comfort, out of fear, out of just being a highly sexual creature at the moment. So for instance, comfort. At a young age, as you're getting used to your body, things can feel comfortable to you and then turn into a slight fetish. For instance, a young boy who's like, oh, mom comforts me. She's always wearing this nice silky lingerie, then might get wired in their head that the silky lingerie is comfort, and then lead people to be more likely, I'm speaking of men at this point, more likely to want to put on comfortable silky clothes, underwear. It's only one of the reasons for these things. But I actually had a client where we had a couple sessions together, and he shared that he found this more passive side of himself where he likes to dress up in lingerie and have somebody kind of domineer him a bit. And we were mostly talking about how he gets around he told me it was okay to share this, but how he gets around his guilt with his wife because she doesn't know. And they're no longer sexually active because she's in menopause, and how he gets around his guilt of being a good Catholic boy, because he was a highly driven, in charge of a lot of people and his jobs in his life. So two things play into that. And I'll have to ask him in the future which one plays into it more for him. Is it that comfort feeling of not having to be in control and the mommy thing? Or is it more of like, please domineer me because I have spent my whole life being a good husband, a good father, a good grandfather, a high worker, and I just want to let go.
I mean, I totally get that. If somebody asks me out and they say, what do you want to do? I'm just like, oh God, if you ask me out, then, say, be here at this time and this is where we're going. And if you have any food concerns like allergies, that's a great question to ask. But other than that, it's just like, tell me where to go. I'll be there.
Which is why you probably like the idea in your head of being tied up, because it takes away control.
Taking away control. There's that, there are the fetish of people that dress like babies and get comforted. I just watched a little documentary about that. It's really fascinating.
Like full diapers and everything. Yeah. Like poop. They want to poop and get changed. And the way my life's been going, I could totally see you being okay with that. Please feed me, bathe me, change.
Yeah, I know, right?
Take care of me for a minute. I'm so tired.
Yeah. For me, not the changing thing, but I like that if somebody.
Oh, I'm not pooping in a diaper. Sorry. I know. Yeah.
Not there's anything wrong with that. If that's
I might pee in it. I think we talked about like the pee thing. Yeah. Like people like to get peed on.
I swear these episodes are getting more chaotic every time. It's hilarious.
I know, they're kind of funny though. So I'll try to stay on track. So the other reason besides comfort is that taboo feeling, right? Oh, sorry. Fear first. Fear comes first. So oftentimes fear as a child or even as an adult can trigger a erotic theme or a kink or a fetish. The number one searched porn concept during COVID was COVID. So people are getting off watching people wearing masks and gloves and having sex. And it was postulated that because it was fearful about being exposed to people, that the fear then triggered excitement, that then triggered it being exciting to watch people having COVID sex. Again, to each their own.
Yeah, it's just so interesting to me.
I know. And so it can change over time, obviously.
We're all we just want to get animals. It's funny, you've brought up on a couple episodes about menopause. I think we definitely need to have an episode about that, just off the cuff, because I know plenty of people in menopause that are still having sex. So we need to have something about that. I'm just throwing that out there.
Like, how do you continue to have good sex life during menopause? Or maybe we make it dual. Sex after 50 for men and women, like, because it's harder for men too. We will do one of those. But right now we're back to the taboos of the world. So another reason that people get fetishes and enjoy kink is the taboo part. This is more with fetishes. So that concept of like, it's super off limits to have people watch us. Like you had talked in the past one about having sex and maybe somebody's going to see us. Taboo brings that on for people. But oftentimes once that taboo is met, it kind of dissipates, where it's like, okay, well, I did that. It's a little less, again, difference between kink and fetish. If it's a kink, you do that taboo thing. You're like, that was fun. Okay. Versus a fetish where you're like, I can only get off if people are watching me.
Yeah. So I've definitely gone through some taboos in my lifetime. And I think, oh, been there, done that. Don't need to.
Me too. I've rolled through a bunch of them where I'm like, that was okay. That was
fun. But I don't think there's anything that I need in order to orgasm, for example, anything specifically. So I don't know. I must not have a kink then, because I can't think of anything that is an absolutist.
Interesting. Do you think, going back to what I always say is, do you think you orgasm a bit easier than I would? For me, I often have to have some kind of power play dynamic fantasy going on in my head while I'm engaging in intercourse, because then it's kind of like exciting and turn the brain on, turn my brain off, turn the body on. It's always power play. It's always some form of power play.
Definitely have done that, but I don't think I have to do that in order to reach orgasm.
Lucky girl. Okay, so the other reason people is because people, when they're highly sexualized, usually when people are a bit younger, right? So definitely not last but not least, when people are young and just want to have sex, fantasize, do it, kinky, fetish it. Usually that's men in their 20s and women in their 40s. Really? Which is why at one point I dated somebody younger. It did feel like that actually held true. Yeah. That's when you're the most highly sexualized. But bottom line, if there's something you want to do that's kinky or fetish, as long as it doesn't hurt somebody, ask your partner, try it out. In our links, we link down to a thing for BDSM for beginners. And there's also a book out, BDSM for beginners. And so anybody who wants to try kind of more of a kinky thing with your partner, but that's different than the paraphilias. And we kind of touched on that. So a paraphilia is actually a condition that's actually in the DSM-5, which is a diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders that as medical people we use. It's a list of everything that falls under mental disorders, and paraphilias fall under that. And these are fetishes that are considered a mental illness. So pedophilia, bestiality. Don't have sex with animals, people. Do not have sex with children. Bestiality. Don't have sex with animals. Don't have sex with children. And there was another one. I'll find it. When people want to like show themselves to people.
Exposing. Don't expose yourself.
Yeah. Exposing and like rubbing against people in the subways. Not okay.
Don't molest people without their consent.
Don't. It's called frauderism. Touching or rubbing against a non-consenting person.
Frauderism.
Yeah. So anyway, any of those things without consent, not okay. And for people that have
but like you said before, if you're drawn to do those things, seek help to not be like that, because it's not healthy. It's dangerous. You go to prison. You're hurting people.
Yes.
Do not do those things.
Do not do those things. These are separate from the kink and fetish community. These are things that are illegal. These are things that are not healthy. And these are the ways that you can know that maybe you have a problem. And so it gets in the way of life. It's all consuming. You're hurting others. And you feel super psychologically dependent on doing that. And it starts to cause you like a compulsive problem. Oftentimes this can be people that got over involved in porn as youngsters, addicted to porn, that can fuel a fetish, that can fuel a problem. And so even if it's not a true, if you're starting to feel like you're going in that direction, just get help. There's counselors that deal with that and only that.
And with porn, I mean, obviously porn, you're not hurting someone outside, so in theory. However, if that's the only way, if you find the porn has to get more and more intense or more and more,
yes,
and all that, there may be something going on there. You might want
yes, if you have to keep moving into more severe porn in order to get off, because unfortunately that can lead to needing more severe things in real life. It does correlate. They've done studies, it correlates.
Yeah.
And so the 5 signs that your sexual fetish has gotten out of control, you think about it multiple times a day. It gets in the way of your like normal daily living. You're dwelling on it. You have to think about it to get aroused in all areas of sexual activity. You can't you can't have sex without performing that act. Even so, remember, with a fetish, you may need to perform that act. The difference is if you want to perform that act on a person who's non-consenting and you do not care.
Right.
That's the difference. You spend way too much money towards it, or again, you push your spouse or significant other to perform these things, even though they're telling you, I don't want to do this.
I have to fight the Pledge of Allegiance in order to come.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do it.
I just forgot the Pledge of Allegiance. I can't believe my brain's on fetishes and kink. I can't think about I used to have this thing memorized. So ways to help: put the fetish aside, stop hyper focusing on it. Try to find other things that bring you joy or arousal, work with a coach or a therapist. Oftentimes, some fetishes that are out of control can come from past trauma, and it's your body's way of trying to feel good and get good endorphins and work through that issue. But again, if it's hurting somebody else, that's not okay.
Or yourself, if you're hurting because of it, that's not just somebody else, but this stuff can be very damaging to your own life.
Yes, if it's getting away, you're not going to work because you're spending too much money. If it starts to feel like it's a problem, if it's just fun and light and airy, go do it. I go to this LGBTQI club in Guerneville, and one of the guys there is always talking about how he has a dungeon. I was like, someday I want to see your dungeon. So I mean, there's a lot of these things that are healthy and fun and not unhealthy for people. So this was interesting. I think I put a link to it.
I don't mean to yawn.
I know it's been a long day. We're almost there. We're so close. List of top 10 things looked up in the USA as far as kink and fetishism. So masochism, deriving pleasure from people receiving pain. Group sex. Sadism, which is deriving pleasure from inflicting pain on a sexual partner. Sports gear.
Wait, so sadism and masochism are different, right?
Masochism is you want to receive pain. Sadism is you want to inflict pain.
Oh, got it. Okay, got it.
Sports gear. That's an interesting one. So,
right.
I guess it's not. Cheerleading outfits. Armpits. Licking, kissing, penetrating, having sex with an armpit. Balloons. Okay. You talked about balloons earlier.
I watched a thing on that. Yeah.
They're called lunars. I did not know that. Okay. So blowing them up and popping them. I watched a whole thing on people that like to play with cakes. Smooshing them and rubbing cake all over themselves.
Let me tell you something about there's so much fetish TikTok where you don't even realize you're watching fetish TikTok. Like the people that are baking the cakes and they keep doing this, or they're like, and they keep talking about what they're going to do, but they never get to what they do. It's called edging.
Oh,
so like sexual edging is when you bring somebody close to orgasm, but in the cooking show fetish TikTok, it's pretty wild. And now that I watched the whole thing on it, now I see it so much on TikTok, is how much of the content is fetish, where they never quite finished baking the cake, or they never quite finished decorating the thing, or they never, and it's all like very.
There's people that get off on. So yes. people are allowed to get off on anything. Suits. These are the top USA ones. So you and I talked about the firefighters. So business suits, people in uniform.
I like tattoos are sexy.
Oh, tattoos are hot. I like tattoos. Used underwear. We talked about that. Voyeurism derives pleasure from watching others get it on. Again, it needs to be consensual. The new ones on me were the medical ones. I had never thought about that. Remember we talked about the sounding and the urethra. And I think I had known this one, but pooping in pantyhose. It's like somebody wearing pantyhose and they poop and it smushes in there. Poop play does nothing for me, but if it does it for you, just make sure you wash your hands and don't get it in the vaginal area. There's too much E. coli. You can get diseases from poop. I keep calling it poop. I'm a medical provider. Do I call it stool, a bowel movement, or poop? I don't know.
Oh, is that a form of fecophilia then?
Yes. I feel like Freud would be super fascinated by the pooping part, the pantyhose and I don't know where that one comes from. I'd have to do more research. But you and I had talked about this once, so that was the United States ones. Yeah. Different cultures. The biggest thing looked up in India is men breastfeeding on their wives.
That's a whole thing.
About this.
Yeah, that's a whole thing. Yeah, for sure.
And I think
it seems like it's got a nurturing aspect to it.
That it goes back to what, remember we talked about fear, comfort. So for them, it's a comfort driven thing. It's called lacophilia. Well, so bottom line, I watched this whole cool one. 2 cool things about people that dress up as ponies.
Oh, the ponies one and the furries. That's a big thing.
The furries, the ponies, and the dogs. The dogs wear dog collars and the ponies literally get dressed up as full ponies and pull carriages as people.
Love it.
But again, going back, remember, to the fetish and the kink, it doesn't always have to be sexual.
Right.
So when you're looking at the furries and the dogs it's not sexual, but it's a kink or even possibly a fetish.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a woman that in community college class, and she dressed as, I took this writing class at the community college by my house. It was really cool. She was dressed like a cat and she meowed and she wore the tail and the ears. And anyway, pretty
You just reminded me of it. I think I watched a documentary and it's a cat house.
Yeah.
And men can go in, anybody can go in, but men were going in and just not sexual, but lounging around with women dressed sexy as cats and rubbing on them and purring on them.
I mean, why not?
Again, everything is okay unless it falls into one of those ones that's not okay. Yeah. Consent, communication, and don't do anything that's illegal, people. Yeah. But it's kind of fun. I don't think I linked to the field one down below, so we will. I'll add it on there. But there's a bunch of things that talk about fetishes. How do you talk to your partner about fetishes? The BDSM for beginners is nice because you can do it with your partner. Like, which ones do you like and which ones do I like? And kind of talk about doing fun things together. There's a kink and fetishes link down below, the A to Z guide. So there's a bunch of stuff on there that will hopefully do that. And then, of course, we added a quiz. Did you take the quiz? The quiz. No quiz? It's okay. Let's give her some clout. Can I share that you're busy girl?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Let
she has evil things up her sleeves.
There's a lot going on. So I just been trying to eke out a little extra time. It's been tough, but yeah.
You are fully allowed because you have fun stuff up your sleeve, which is super exciting. So pretty much there's a quiz down below that tells you how kinky or freaky you are. It was interesting. Mine came out kinky and freaky, which says I like to have fun and have no problem trying new things, which is totally true.
I think that's true for me too.
Yeah, I think you would probably fall in there. Yeah. But the problem is I feel like the older I get, the more vanilla I am.
Here's the thing. If somebody said to me, hey, I really like XYZ, I would probably be like, okay, we can try that. You know, I had a boyfriend in college. I may have brought this up before. I can't remember that he liked having things inserted in he liked carrots more specifically. And I was like,
you never told me this.
Okay. And I mean, now so many years later, I would be like, okay, that might get dangerous because the sphincter is such a powerful thing. I didn't know that then, but he really enjoyed that. So I did. I was like, sure, why not?
Well, we talked about that. We talked about that on our toys one. It's because the prostate is so sensitive. Do you think he was only using carrots because he didn't have access to a dildo or a butt plug?
Probably. Yeah. Who knows? Or I mean,
you guys were young.
Yeah, we were young, and maybe he just wanted that part of him stimulated. And the logic would be like, what's pointy in my, what's something shaped like something that would go in there that isn't sexual? Somebody can sort of because especially when you're young, everyone's like, oh, that's gay or something. So for him, maybe he felt like if he used a vegetable, it would be something less.
It makes total sense.
But you know what? Just also, let's put this out there. you can be perfectly fine with getting stimulated in your anal region and not be gay. You don't, that doesn't mean you're gay. So if it's something you want to try and see if it's something you like, also nothing wrong with being gay, but it's just, you know,
it's such a stigma for straight men.
Such a stigma, yeah.
But remember, we talked about it on our toys, and you alluded to it. It has to have a base on it because
because the finger is strong.
The rectal area lost. You'd have to have surgery.
Ooh. Don't get in the ER.
No.
So yeah, go to the toy store and get toys, or get them online. There's plenty of places that will send them directly to your door discreetly. So
yes, don't use carrots. Although that was very, very ingenious of him at a young age. I'm sorry you're tired. We're gonna let you go.
No, I'm not tired
because you have big things up your sleeve.
I'm not tired. I yawned. That's a lack of oxygen. I'm probably,
So in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about dating. Well, alcohol and dating.
We're going to drink while we do the episode and see how it affects us.
Yeah.
That'll be a fun one.
It will be fun. We'll have some drinks and you guys can watch us go from sober to slightly buzzed to possibly a little bit inebriated. But the whole goal of that is like, how does that affect you when you're dating?
Yeah.
And actually, I think I'm going to broaden it a little bit to even how does that affect you if you're out and about for safety purposes? Like we think we're sober, but we're not always as sober as we think. And then of course, as a medical provider, I'm going to have to throw in a bunch of stuff about like safety in drinking and not letting your drinking get out of control. Because,
and not letting
a medical provider.
Never leave your drink unattended.
Never leave your drink unattended.
Yeah, that's dangerous too.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. That's going to be fun.
Well, this is a really interesting one. Y'all go experiment, go have fun, be safe, be consensual, enjoy it, feel good. Thank you for watching. Lots of links below. Please subscribe. And it really helps. Tell your friends, share this information, send the videos around. We appreciate you. Thank you.
And remember, please be gentle. If you are in the kink or BDSM community, and I've gotten anything wrong or we've gotten anything wrong, please comment down below. We were happy to correct it. This was all just stuff that we're putting out because we want everybody to understand that it's normal to feel these ways.
Yes, absolutely. And I love you, Mara. Thank you.
Love you too.
Yeah, and stay connected and be well, everybody. And yay, go out there and have fun.
Go have some fun. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.